الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تمسك بسنته إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد. As we continue this great explanation, or this great book rather, but a great illustrious scholar is considered Al-Mujaddid al-Thani, Al-Tajdid al-Thani, the second reviver or the second revitalization of the religion, in which you'll find that the scholars of Tariq, the theologians, consider the second revivery of the religion. When we say revivery, it does not mean he came with something new. It means that he called the Muslims back to what they left off, that he was a reason or inspiration due to his great sincerity. The great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin Ahmad ibn Abdul Halim ibn Abdul Salam ibn Taymiyyah al-Harrani al-Dimashqi, the one who died 728 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And like we mentioned, he was considered from those mujaddidun. Mujaddid is the one who comes or calls the people to what they abandoned. Not that he's coming with anything new or he's adding something onto the religion. The religion is complete by Allah. But the people left or lost their way. The people lost their way. And you'll find Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have revealed to our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in the narration, which is in Bukhari, where he said alayhi salatu wasalam, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَبْعَثُ عَلَى رَأْسِ كُلِّ مِئَةٍ سَنَةٍ مَنْ يُجَدِّدُ لَهُمْ دِينَهُمْ أَوْ أُمُورَ دِينِهِمْ. That Allah will send at the end of every 100 years someone that will revitalize or revive for them their religion. And what we mean by that does not mean he's coming with anything new. He's coming with a matter to revive or call the people to what they abandoned. To call the people to what they abandoned, and that sincerity that that person carries is a source of inspiration for the people to return back to that abandoned affair. So, the great Imam, you'll find that the theologians within Tariq, within history, consider the great Imam Abu al-Abbas from these people. Those great scholars, that was a reason to call the Muslims back to what they had abandoned and left off. And as a result, you'll find that when the matters of the pure Islam are abandoned, that's when things go left within the earth. That's when corruption becomes widespread. And that's the reason of why societies fall apart, because they have left off the proper guidance. And when the people do not have proper guidance, they lose their way, and all types of consequences come as a result of it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of course, makes us all reasons of those who cling to what's correct, even though there are many great adversity around them, calling the people to go away from what they're upon. Ameen. So what we mentioned, we talked about the statement of Ibn Khafif. I forgot to mention the time. It's the time now, 7:43 p.m., Wednesday, July the 3rd, 2024 of the Gregorian calendar, which corresponds with the Tariq al-Islami, al-Hijri, was currently the 10th to 27th, everyone, according to mine, the 27th of Dhul Hijjah, the year 1445, the year 1445, after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. After we spoke about the matters of the statement, like we said, the great Imam Abu al-Abbas Taqiyuddin Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah rahimahullah was mentioned in the statement of Ibn Khafif rahimahullah, and you'll find that he was mentioning what was the key ingredients and factors pertaining to our belief. And they all agree with the pure Islam in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was upon and what he taught his companions. As you know, if you analyze what we mentioned previously, everyone, the paragraph was speaking about Asl Iman. We spoke about that, right, everyone? So, قال أصل الإيمان موهبة يتولد منها أفعال العباد فيكون أصله التصديق. This is what we finished. He said that the origin of faith is a what? Is a gift. Mawhiba. It's a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a matter in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants to certain people. And if it's settled in the heart of an individual, what comes as a result of it is actions of the servants. يتولد منها أفعال العباد. أفعال العباد. The actions of the servants, if his iman has been planted firm within the hearts, then the limbs become active, as we talked about. Of that great statement of the Salaf, إذا حدت الهداية قلبا نشطت في العبادة الأعضاء. As you'll find the statement, which is a very profound, great statement from the Salaf, where they said that if guidance truly penetrates one's heart, if it truly settles and penetrates the heart, then the limbs become active. What does that mean? That true faith, where it's sound and it penetrates and it really settles in the heart and it has an effect on your heart, the effect of it will be what? Exemplified in your limbs. What does that mean, everyone? Meaning in your actions. So if sound faith has penetrated, the effect of that, you'll see it clearly in the obedience of Allah and His Messenger. And staying away from the matters, as we mentioned, of what angers Allah and opposes the commands of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's the meaning of the statement, that if proper guidance has settled in the heart of a person, then the limbs become active. What does that mean, everyone? Meaning that your righteous actions will become what? Will become shown within your actions and in your limbs of what you carry out, the commands of Allah and His Messenger. So, these type of statements, and we bring the opposite of what opposes it, is the statements of Muslims about them saying, I don't have to do such and such, and faith is here. And you see how that affair is what? Contradictive. Because we just mentioned that if true faith has settled in your heart, then your limbs will become effective in a positive way. Meaning, that positive effect that will come as a result of proper aqidah, proper belief, proper faith, settling in your heart. So no one can say that what they're upon, as far as disobedience of Allah, and them using the excuse by saying faith is here. Because if true faith has truly settled in your heart, that affair will be exemplified where, everyone? It will be actualized where? It will be actualized in your actions. Meaning by your obedience and what? Your uprightness. So that's what we mentioned in brief last class. So that was the statement of Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, where Shaykh al-Islam cited his statement. So it says, فَيَكُونُ أَصْلُهُ التَّصْدِيقِ وَالْإِقْرَارِ وَالْأَعْمَالِ وذكر الخلاف في زيادة الإيمان ونقصانه وقال قولنا أنه يزيد وينقص. We already mentioned this. We finished this, so we're going to move on to the new one. He said that the origin is التصديق الخاص, that true belief or that true conviction. That's the meaning of, as we said, Iman is a tasdeeq, that firm, true, exclusive belief. And that true acknowledgement, which also, of course, the origin and the root of it is in the heart. Then what sprouts out from that seed that's planted in your heart is what, everyone? The actions. They sprout out. They sprout out of different what? Branches of those actions. And the actions, like we said, as we talked about the statement of Al-Hasan al-Basri last class, rahimahullah, what did he say? We already talked about this because we're going to move on. Just mention it briefly before we start the new affair, or we speak on the new affair and explain it. It says, إن الإيمان ليس بالتمني ولا بالتحلي ولكنه ما وقر في القلوب وصدقته الأعمال. Verily, faith is not just by hoping and just by mere facade, meaning outward displayment. Tahalli means to look decorated and sweet looking, like a facade, where it's not real. He said it's just not by hopes that one day I'll get myself together, one day I'll do what I'm supposed to do, nor is it by just mere facade. However, it's when it penetrates the heart or settles in the heart and the actions confirm it. It settles in the heart and the actions, like we said, confirm it. So that's in brief what we mentioned last class. So let's continue. قال وذكر الخلاف في زيادة الإيمان ونقصانه وقال قولنا أنه يزيد وينقص. He said, this is where we stopped at last class, and I wanted to speak about the affair of irja, pertaining to some of those scholars that fell into this matter of what they call irja or fuqaha, or they call the irja al-fuqaha, or murji'at al-fuqaha, excuse me. Murji'ah al-fuqaha. Murji'at al-fuqaha is what happened with some of those scholars of the past, the jurisprudence of what happened with Abu Hanifa. That's what I wanted to speak about today. And we'll talk about that. But before we speak about the statement or the position of Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, in regards to what was said about him, about this particular matter, what he fell into was what was called Murji'atul Fuqaha. As we talked about irja, everyone, means ta'khir, means to put something off or to put it off for later. Irja in Arabic language means ta'khir, meaning to put it off, or it means linguistically to remove it, or it means to put it off for later. You understand, everyone? And like we mentioned last class, I give a statement where you'll find even from the Arabic language, people say this in the lugha, in the Arabic language. They say, for example, sanu'akhiruhu ghadan, or sanurji'uhu ghadan. We'll do it tomorrow. We'll put it off what? Tomorrow. Nurji'uhu, from irja. Nurji'uhu ghadan, meaning we'll do it later. We'll put it off till later. Nurji'uhu fima ba'd, or we'll do it later. طيب. The affair pertaining to irja, as we said, everyone, of what in the past. If I had more time, we'll speak about it. I think in the book, alhamdulillah, in Hamawiyyah, you'll find there's a chapter where Shaykh al-Islam actually goes into the history of those who fell into this particular type of deviation, of those who came in order to remove actions from faith and say it's not part of what? It's not part of Iman. We all said that the position of Ahl Sunnah in this regard is that what? Actions is from what? Is from faith. It is from faith. In addition to that, we talked about how it what? Increases and it what? Decreases. So, Ibn Khafif said, rahimahullah, before I talk about the Murji'atul Fuqaha, just mention the statement of Ibn Khafif in this regard before we talk about other matters, or the matter pertaining to what happened with Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah. طيب. قولنا نحن معشر الجمهور أهل السنة والجماعة الإيمان يزيد وينقص عندنا ومن أهل السنة من شذ قال إنه لا يزيد ولا ينقص. He said, of course, meaning us of Ahl Sunnah. He's talking about the statement of Ibn Khafif. Ibn Khafif says, he said, ثم كان الاختلاف في القرآن. Let's talk about the Quran. Excuse me. وذكر الخلاف في زيادة الإيمان ونقصانه. He mentioned the differing and the increasement of faith and its decreasement, or its incline or decline. And he said, by our statement, meaning the people of Sunnah, is that it what? It increases and it decreases, or it inclines and it what? Declines. Or it goes up, or it goes what? It goes down. So, the people of the Sunnah, of course, this is what our belief is, firmly. You'll find that he says, وَلَكِنَّنَا نَتَحَفَّظُ مِنْ عَدَمِ الْإِطْلَاقِ عَلَيْهِمْ أنهم ليسوا من أهل السنة والجماعة ولكن نقول بعض أهل السنة والجماعة. He's talking about the great Imam Muhammad al-Jami. He's speaking about Abu Hanifa and what he fell into in regards to this particular matter. This, we're going to speak about it in a moment. He said, from Ahl Sunnah, who left or went into the affair of what? Man shadh. He said they went into something weird. That say it doesn't increase or decrease. And like I just told you who he's speaking about. He said, however, we're on guard and cautious by not saying they're not from what? Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Who's he speaking about? Abu Hanifa. He said, وَلَكِنْ نَقُولُ بَعْضَ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ like الَّذِينَ خَالَفُوا جَمْهُورَ أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ وَالْجَمَاعَةِ زَعَمُوا إِنَّ الْإِيمَانِ إِمَّا مُجَرَّدَ التَّصْدِيقِ. Now he's speaking about people who did totally abandon what was correct. Before we speak about that matter. Those who claim that verily faith excuse me, is just mere tasdeeq, it's just mere conviction. Something went in my throat, excuse me. Either something is just mere tasdeeq, just belief, meaning no statements and no what? Actions, which is incorrect. Or tasdeeq wal qawl ma'an, or it's the belief in the heart and statements together, and that's it. However, it does not increase nor decrease, which is also what? Incorrect. الزيادة والنقصان في المؤمن به أي يؤمن به العبد أما إيمان القلب لا يزيد ولا ينقص. He said, of course, in regards to what the believer believes in, either it is faith of the heart and that's it, but it does not increase nor decrease, as we just mentioned, which is also incorrect. هكذا قال بعضهم وهذا القول ألفت فيه كتب واختلف الناس في هذه المسألة ولكن عند التحقيق. He's speaking about, of course, what happened with Abu Hanifa. Abu Hanifa, everyone, the type of irja, or what was said about him, which is called murji'atul fuqaha. You'll find that in the books in which Abu Hanifa had written, from those books is called Al-Fiqh al-Akbar, the greatest fiqh, Al-Fiqh al-Akbar by Abu Hanifa, in which you'll find in the book his belief and his creed. It's called Al-Fiqh al-Akbar, the greatest fiqh. Him establishing what his belief is in regards to what? The belief of what Ahl Sunnah believe. You'll find that he says that actions, of course, is incumbent upon the servant. The actions are binding upon the servant. And the actions are extremely important. He's saying, as far as the wording, to say that it's asl iman or those type of statements, that is the thing he didn't mention, even though what he believed was applied. It was applied. But he didn't actually give the wording. So, al-khulfu fima yabdu khulfun jawhari walaysa bisuri walakin la yalzamuna min qawlina al-khilaf khilaf jawhari annahum kharijun min ahli sunnah. الخلاف صوري بل معناه إنهم شذوا عن جمهور أهل السنة والجماعة وهذا يحصل كثيرا في مسائل كثيرة. Meaning, Abu Hanifa, he didn't actually say the word, but that is what he believed. If you look in his book and you actually look into what he was applying and saying how actions are very important, actions are not to be left off, such as the prayer, such as all those other matters, that if the person abandons it or they fall into certain affairs, then they have to be what? Establish the prescribed punishment according to the Muslim ruler, and all the other matters that is binding as far as the person that abandons acts of obligated acts or certain acts that he does not what? Do, which he's binding to do, or like we said in regards to the obedience that he's supposed to adhere to, that he'll be punished in the hereafter if he abandons them, and he'll be rewarded if he doesn't. He believed that firmly. But the actual wording to give an actual istilah, that actual terminology to say it in words, those are the things that you'll find that he didn't mention. So the khilaf, as they say, they mention and said, is in that actual wording, but in his actual belief, he believed that the actions are from Iman. But they did not just give the actual wording. So they said that murji'atul fuqaha, that is lighter than just the people who fell to irja exactly. So it was just, he applied it, but he just didn't give the wording. That's basically what it is. He said actions has to be done, person has to pray, person has to do voluntary acts, voluntary fasting, all these things a Muslim should do. They have to do it. It shows that they're what? Strong in their faith. Strong in what they believe in, and if he abandons certain acts, he'll be punished in the hereafter for it. And of course, if he was in a Muslim land, then he will also receive what? Prescribed punishment for falling into fornication, falling into adultery, stealing, and different types of crimes and corruption. All these matters he believed in firmly. The problem was the actual wording. That was the affair. The words to say, that actions is inside of faith, and that actions is a branch of faith. He didn't say that. He said, no, I'm not saying that. The actual wording, because there's nothing in the Kitab and Sunnah that says it's stipulated that the wording has to be what? Said. That's called murji'atul fuqaha. It is a type of irja' you'll find that Ahl Sunnah do mention. They said the person should say the what? The words. That's what's correct. They have to say the words. But that murji'atul fuqaha is lighter than the actual people of irja'. And like we said, irja', just to keep it simple, is to believe that actions is not from what? Faith. And that faith does not increase nor do what? Nor does it decrease. You'll find that Abu Hanifa does believe that. Faith does go up, it goes down. But to say that it's from that, those actions with the actual wording, they say that he didn't mention it. That was the affair that they say of what he mentioned, that he fell into. That is called murji'atul fuqaha. Murji'atul fuqaha, and that's lighter than the actual affair of irja'. So, that is what you find the great Imam is mentioning here. Al-khulfu fima yabdu khulfun jawhari wa laysa bisuri. ولكن لا يلزم من قولنا الخلاف خلاف جوهري أنهم خارجون من أهل السنة والجماعة بل معناه إنهم شذوا عن جمهور أهل السنة والجماعة وهذا يحصل كثيرا في مسائل كثيرة. And that's basically what we just mentioned in regards to Abu Hanifa, just to sum it up. But to now go and try to declare him to be out the fold of Ahl Sunnah, and those type of matters, like we said, it's binding upon the people to what? Stay away from it. Let's keep going. ثم قال ثم كان الاختلاف في القرآن وجد كان هنا تامة ثم كان الاختلاف أي وقع الاختلاف في القرآن. You'll find that he's speaking about those who differ in the Quran. And he's not talking about Ahl Sunnah as I keep mentioning everyone. He's talking about those Muslims generally that have Islam, but they went astray in regards to what was correct, even though they still had with them the Islam generally. But they went away from what was correct. He said that affair of also what they had abandoned throughout history, which is the affair of the Quran being created or not created. He said, is the Quran created? Is it not created? هل الذي وقع بين أهل السنة وبين الذين زاهوا? This matter that pertaining to those who believe that is not from the people of Sunnah and those who went astray by saying that the Quran is created. So, that is what happened to the Muslims generally. Not in regards to those who want to stay firm upon the truth specifically. Those who want to be firm upon the truth remain firm by saying the Quran is not what? Created. Those from the Muslims that generally had Islam, but they went astray from the affair, they are the ones that fell into what they call ikhtilaf. So those type of matters, as we mentioned, which Ibn Khafif is saying. He said, our statement is, meaning the people want to hold firm to what's correct and adhere to it, in which you'll find that those who migrated were upon, and those who received those who migrated from Mecca were upon, meaning the Ansar, that the Quran is the speech of Allah. And it is not created, and from Allah it started, and to Allah it would return. The meaning of it that it will return, meaning that we know the Quran as we see today, and it was been memorized in the hearts of the people, one day and one night it will be removed. It will be taken away. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove it from the earth. Of what's memorized in the hearts of the men, and then one day, as we come know the narration, there will be one night when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remove it from the memories of the people. It will be gone. The Quran will be what? Removed. And that's the meaning of the statement of the Salaf. From Allah it started, and to Him it will what? It will return. Meaning there will be one day, all of it will be removed. وَلَا حَوْلَ وَلَا قُوَّةَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ. So you'll find, as it says, هَكَذَا فِيمَا مَضَى لَا يَزِيدَ السَّلَفُ الْأَوَّى عَلَى قَوْلِهِمْ. What happened in the past, everyone, is that the first of the Salaf, meaning the Sahaba, and those who came after, of those generations, and those scholars that came after the first three generations, who remained firm upon what they were upon. When this affair that the devil had now inspired certain individuals to say, for example, that the Quran is created, which was a satanic inspiration, which certain people adopted and spread it. And they tested the people by it and persecuted them as a result of it. Especially during the time of the blessed, during the statement, the statement of Imam Ahmad, rahimahullah. So what happened was, you'll find everyone that the statement of the Salaf in the beginning was this: the Quran is the speech of Allah. That's it. Al-Quran kalam Allah. He said, وَلَمَّا وَقَعَ الْقَوْلُ بِخَلْقِ الْقُرْآنِ زَادُوا. So you'll find that the Sahaba, the first three generations, all of them believed that the Quran was what everyone? The speech of Allah. That's it. Then when the trials of the affair of the Quran being created came about and emerged, what happened? Then they increased the statement by saying the Quran is the speech of Allah and it's not created. Then you'll find when the trials and tribulations increase and intensify, they increase the statement more by saying it's a characteristic of Allah. From Him it started and to Him it will return. Just as Imam Ahmad mentioned when it said لماذا هذه الزيادات الكثيرة كلها بينما السلف الأول لا يزيدون على قولهم القرآن كلام الله لأنهم يعيشون في جو غير الجو الذي عاش فيه الإمام أحمد. So Imam Ahmad, of course they was asking, why all this extra or additional, or these additions that were made in the statement? So first it started off as what? It's the speech of Allah. Then they increased by saying what everyone? The Quran is the speech of Allah, it's not created. Then they increased more by saying it's what everyone? It's the speech, or it's the characteristic of Allah. From Him it what? Started, and to Him it will what? It will return. Just as Imam Ahmad said. So a person might ask, why all these additives? Why all these additions? Ziyadat, al-kathira. Why all these additions? Whereas the Salaf, they never increased upon the statement that the Quran is the speech of Allah. The answer to that, because they lived in an environment other than the environment in which Imam Ahmad lived in, and what came after him. So there wasn't any need for it until certain fitna had happened. Then as a result of it, it had to be increased. Similar to our times now, in regards to the affair by saying, why do you call yourself Salafi? Why do you call yourself Sunni? Why do you call yourself that you understand Islam according to the pious predecessors? Same thing. Why? Because everyone could not identify based upon that every person that enters the fold of Islam calls themselves what? Muslim. There had to be something that stands out to let the people know that this is a signpost to let us know, even though we're all Muslims generally, but certain Muslims have adopted certain affairs that are what? That oppose the pure Islam, in which the message of Allah was upon. Certain people are upon something else, even though certain people say that they're Muslim outwardly. But if you now contemplate and put in on the scales of what's the pure Islam and what they're upon, ستجد بينهما بونا شاسعا. You'll find between them a great difference between what if the message of Allah is upon and what these people are upon. The problem is how does a Muslim identify themselves when they enter it? Due to the fact that there are all these different types of ways and methods and innovative practices and innovative beliefs. So there has to be some form of identification, or some type of tamyiz, or some type of distinction, in which the Muslims can identify by that distinction that these are the people that are trying to practice Islam purely and practice it whatever you want correctly. Due to the fact that we've seen over the time and over the centuries how these type of ideologies has affected the Muslims, where to the point you'll find that the great Imam Shaykh Fawzan, hafidhullah wa ra'ah, that he said that the people who enter in the fold of Islam based upon deviant sects is almost as if they're going from one form of disbelief to another one. Especially with those who have now come into the fold of Islam based upon grave worshiping and based upon all different types of beliefs, especially the matters pertaining to what the Rawafid are upon, the belief that so-called the 12 great Imams conduct in this existence and they create besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So a person now that comes in the fold of Islam, they hear this rhetoric. And as a result of it, when they adopt it, it's as if they're going from one form of kufr to a what? To another form. And you'll find when the people enter the fold of Islam by these type of deviant ways, you'll find that as a result of it, a lot of them end up in the end, what do we want? Going astray. Or they might what? Apostate. Because none of these ways bring any type of what? Surety. What it brings is more confusion and instability in faith and doubt concerning the faith. And that's the matters that the Muslims are worried about. And as a result of it, they had to come with the names such as what we want, Salafi, or the people that's trying to practice the ways of the pious predecessors. And those are the people that are trying to cling and hold on firmly to what? The pure Islam. Those type of matters, like we said, similar to what happened with Imam Ahmad. Each time one trial came, something else had to be what? Increased as long as it was in accordance with the Kitab and Sunnah. But like we said, the first statement of the Salaf, they just stopped by saying the Quran is what everyone, the speech of Allah. Then when they came, the people of deviation, then they, like we said, had to increase by saying it's the speech of Allah and it's what? Not created. Then they had to add more by saying, what everyone? It's a characteristic of Allah. From Him it was started, and to Allah it will return. So it's similar in that regard. So that's what we mentioned in here. لذلك يقولون, the Quran is the speech of Allah. During that time period, when the trials wasn't so intense to this extent, the Quran was the speech of Allah, and that sufficed. ولكن يقول الإمام أحمد لما زادوا, why did they increase? He said فلما زادوا زدنا. When they increased, what everyone? We increased. لما زادوا وأكثر الكلام زدنا لأجل الرد والإقناع. When they had now increased, well, we increased in the statement. Why? He said because when they increased and they started to now bring confusing speech to confuse the Muslims and lead them astray, we increased in order to what? To refute it and to also be a form of iqna', and also a form of persuasion, to let one know that what? That affair and what they're upon is false, and what we adhere to is what's correct, and it agrees with the book of Allah and the sunnah, the message of Allah, and what the pious predecessors were upon. So that is the reason why, like we said, it went from one statement, and then they had to bring more what? Clarity, and then they had to bring what? More clarity. And like we said, that's similar to the Muslims today by saying what? I'm Muslim, then I what? Increasing more. Trying to practice the Sunnah, or I'm Athari, and then now Salafi, to the end of the statements in which the people of the Sunnah utilize in order to be identified and to also be distinct from those who claim Islam generally, but they're not upon what's correct in regards to belief and creed. And that's the ultimate, like we said, form of disgrace by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, making them in deviant sects. And that's a form of a punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wal-'iyadhu billah. And that we know that is in the Quran, that the affairs of deviant sects are also funded by the non-Muslims. Keep that in mind, everyone. Especially from those who are upon inspiring the people to be upon takfir. As you notice, when the crisis of the Muslims in Palestine and Israel, then more of these deviant sects started appearing. If you notice, more of them started now capitalizing upon this fitna in order to instill doubt in the Muslims, especially in regards to the Muslim countries. Why aren't the leaders doing anything? Why aren't the leaders doing this? Why are they not helping? Why are they, to the end of it? In order to instill doubt, not realizing that these whispers, brothers and sisters, are coming from the non-Muslims to fund these people so you can hate the leaders, because the ultimate goal of the non-Muslims is to destabilize all of the Muslim countries. And you'll find that ISIS and all these other different deviant sects from Boko Haram, Jabal al-Nusra, and all the other deviant sects that had emerged 10 years ago, they're starting to come back again. Why? Because the non-Muslims in the West fund these groups. They fund these groups in order to now rile up the Muslims, heighten their emotions, capitalize upon it, and then so-called, let's overthrow the Tawaghit in the non-Muslim countries. Why? Because the whole ultimate goal is to destabilize all of the Muslim countries. And once you now destabilize the leadership, then the whole country falls apart. Similar to what happened in Iraq, similar to what happened in Syria. All of the affairs became when the West became involved, and they came with ISIS, and ISIS and all these other deviant sects originally came from the West. They originally came from the West. They were funded by the West, and they also are here in regards to what's Twitter. You'll find that the majority of people, this is what they're being inclined towards. Overthrow the Muslim ruler. Why is the ruler not doing anything? Our brothers and sisters are being oppressed. To the end of the affair, because they just don't want to stop at Palestine. They want all the Muslim countries to fall. And they're utilizing that as a tactic, as a satanic tactic to spread their poison to the other Muslim countries. Because ultimately the goal is to destabilize all of them. So they use one fitna in order to spread it amongst all of the other regions. And like we said, brothers and sisters, when you hear this breath, this satanic breath of the so-called wider leaders, and I keep telling brothers, and even you hear it in the city, why is the Muslim ruler not doing this? So now you see that certain people start to get affected by what they see in TV and media. Why the Muslim rulers are you don't know what's going on of what? They have to now not only try to aid the Muslims in Palestine, because once they act, now their country is going to be aimed at. They have to take all that in consideration. And they just made a power move for the West where they took the petrodollar out of the West by destabilizing them economically. That's the worst form of what these so-called satanic people worry about. Because at the end of the day, all they care about is what? Money. That's the worst form you can humiliate these people by in their minds. Destabilizing them in their pockets. But not realizing, everyone, like we just mentioned. If you see now, you hear now this type of rhetoric being spread about so-called, and you notice that a lot of the attacks are upon what? Madkhalis, Madakhila, the Salafis, such and such, or they're so-called spies for the government, all these type of lies, in order to keep the people away from the pure Islam, because the non-Muslims know that their strength lies in them returning back to that affair, so they demonize it. And they also alienate the people from embracing it, by utilizing all these different tactics, and funding all these deviant sects that are upon takfir. From, like we said, the different types from ISIS, all the different types from Boko Haram, all of them from Jabal al-Nusra, all them other different sects that are now emerging when this fitna started. Why? Because the non-Muslims are capitalizing upon it. And those affairs from the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, who are also involved in this mess. And they're also from those who caused it, especially during the Arab Spring. And I'll talk about that later, inshallah. But those type of matters, everyone, when you hear this nonsense, so the Muslims that come into the fold of Islam, it's incumbent upon the people to let one know of what is considered as a form of distinction. To not just say I'm Muslim, but be with the people who are trying to practice what's correct. Adhere to the proper aqeedah and the proper belief, and those scholars that are upon that, and those who are connecting the people with those scholars, those great senior scholars. Those type of matters, like we said, is a form of identification, to know who's who. And not to be fooled and trapped by the satanic traps and beguiled by those who now set these type of traps for the Muslims, especially here in America. You see on social media so many people that's inspired by takfir. Takfir. That's all you hear and that's all you see. Not realizing these are all tactics from the non-Muslims, paying certain Muslims who take money from the non-Muslims to deceive them. Just keep that in mind when you hear this nonsense and rhetoric. The non-Muslims are funding these people. I wouldn't be surprised, for example, the likes of Yasser Qadhi and all of them are spies for the government. I would not be surprised. Rather, I think a lot of people believe that these people are funded by the non-Muslims in order to keep the Muslims weak and to keep them far away from embracing the methodology of the Salaf. Keep them far away from it, alienating them from it, instilling doubts concerning it. And that's the reason why you'll find the videos, everything is, I was once Salafi, but such and such. So what you now, calling the people of shirk? And now you see the Shia and the Rawafid, and the people who are truly enemies of Islam from grave worship, and other than that, you don't say anything about them. And that is the affair that's destroying the Muslims, keeping them weak, and keeping them what? Divided and separated. So those are the things, like we said, everyone, in regards to the names, why the people who are trying to identify themselves and make themselves distinct from the people of falsehood, why they utilize these names. So do not be deceived by the old shanshanat qadima, na'rifuha min akhzam, by the statement by them saying, oh, we're all Muslim, let's just stay away from the names. Well, you tell those same people, stay away from the grave worship and the bid'ah, and alleviate and destroy yourselves on all those matters. Do that first. And all those other affairs have divided the Muslims. That is the matter that you have to focus on. And that is the matter you'll find that they do in every type of so-called occasion. Even for Ramadan, they do the same thing. Oh, why can't we just be united for this to division? Of the sighting of the moon. Why can't we unite? The great Imam Shaykh Fawzan Hafidhullah gave a very profound statement when he refuted this nonsense. You know what he said? He said, why are you worrying about uniting us upon the sighting? Unite the Muslims upon the proper Aqidah first. That's more important than worrying about so-called uniting them upon the what? The sighting of the moon where they're still divided. Is it clear? That is a very, like we said, great statement that the great Imam mentioned. Hafidhullah. So let's keep going. So that's the affair we wanted to clarify. He said when they went astray and when they increased, Imam Ahmed said that what? We increased. Meaning we gave more what? Clarity of what's the correct statement in regards to the position, in regards to the Quran. Is it clear? Let's keep going. Then you'll find Imam Ahmed and those from the Salaf, they increase by adding more, by saying what, everyone? That is غَيْرُ مَخْلُوق. It's not created. وَأَنَّهُ صِفَةٌ لِلَّهِ. And that's a characteristic of Allah. And it's from the characteristics of Allah. From Him it started, meaning as far as in speech, qawlan, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what? Spoke. And that the Quran is a what? Speech of Allah. Is it clear, everyone? تَكَلَّمَ اللَّهُ بَهِ هو الذي تكلم به فالله هو الذي تكلم بهذا القرآن. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that spoke this Quran. Jibreel heard it from Allah with words and with a voice. Is it clear, everyone? Angel Jibreel alayhi salam heard it from Allah by a voice and by what, everyone? Letters. And I told everyone about that book by the great Imam Al-Imam Al-Sijzi in his book called Al-Rad' ala man ankara al-harf was-sawt. The refutation of those who reject that Allah speaks with words and the voice. That on the day of resurrection, where every individual will stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will hear their Lord speak. And their Lord will speak with a what? Voice. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will speak with what, everyone? With letters, understood. That's the reason why he said, Jibreel heard the Quran from Allah. بِحَرْفِهِ وَصَوْتِهِ. By the words and by what? Allah's voice. Jibreel heard it. And Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, our prophet, heard it from who? Jibreel. And the Sahaba heard it from who? The message of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Until the Quran arrived to us by the way they call tawatur. The speech of Allah. As far as in what? The letters and the meaning. These words or these letters, we read it every day. And it's considered what, everyone? From the speech of Allah. Clear. You understand, everyone? ولكن الآن الأصوات التي نسمعها عندما يتلو التالون كتاب الله. The problem is the voices of which we hear. He says when those reciters recite the book of Allah. He said متلو كلام الله. Now this is the distinction that I want everyone to understand. What is recited is the speech of Allah. But the voice is the voice of what? The reciter. Is it clear? لِأَنَّنَا مَا نَسْمَعُ صَوْتَ اللَّهِ. We don't hear the voice of Allah. However, we hear the voice of who? The reciter. The voice of the reciter is created. Is it clear? The voice of the reciter is what? Is what, everyone? It's created. It's clear? However, what he's reciting is what? It's not created. Is it clear? What he's reciting is what? Speech of Allah. It's not created. But the voice of the reciter is what? It's created. Good. المتلو كلام الله والصوت صوت القارئ التالي ولكن نسمع كلام الله بحروف. However, we hear the speech of Allah by letters, in which they heard from Allah. الَّذِينَ سَمِعُوا مِنَ اللَّهِ سَمِعُوا صَوْتَ اللَّهِ. Meaning, of course, the prophets and the messengers. Like we said, Jibreel heard it from Allah. Jibreel gave it to the message of Allah. Then the Sahaba heard it from the message of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to the message of Allah, Laylat al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, he heard the speech of Allah from Allah directly. When the message of Allah ascended above the seven heavens, he ascended above the Arsh, above the throne. The message of Allah ascended above the throne, the Arsh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what everyone, addressed the message of Allah, spoke to him. The message of Allah heard what? A voice, and he heard what? Letters, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressed him by, directly. بِحَرْفِهِ وَصَوْتِهِ. By the letters and by what? The voice. الكلام الذي في النفس, of course, الذي لا يسمع أو ما يجري في النفس الذي لا يسمع وَلَيْسَ لَهُ حَرْفٌ. We do not say, as the Asha'ira say, that it's inward speech. That the message of Allah did not hear direct speech, he heard inward speech. That's not heard. Rather, it's the type of what's considered inward thoughts. Now, a person that hears that will be what? I'll say that's confusing, that doesn't make any sense. Because what is inside, or what's considered internal speech, it's not heard. Inward thoughts is not what? Heard everyone. Nor does it have any letters to it. Nor does it have a voice to it. La sawt yusamma hadith al-nafs. Internal thoughts or internal talk of what they say. That's not considered speech. Even amongst the people, that's not considered speech. La yusamma kalam al-shar'an. Al-kalam alladhi yutakallamu bih. The speech in which one speaks by, of course, what does it comprise of, everyone? Voice and what? Letters. That's clear. For any Muslim that hears this and they want to embark upon learning and educating themselves in Islam properly, when they hear that, they say, yeah, of course, that makes sense. On the day of resurrection, I'm going to hear my Lord's voice. He will speak to me. He's going to speak to me with a voice. He's going to speak to me with letters. He's going to hold me accountable. He's going to rate my deeds. He's going to present my deeds to me. He's going to ask me which excuse, which speech for. It's clear. And that type of affair, brothers and sisters, will bring surety to the individual, to the Muslim. And that will increase him in faith and increase him to be what? Productive religiously, and he will what? He'll be upright. But these affairs, by saying no voice, it's internal thoughts, those matters will bring what? Doubt. When a person hears this type of nonsense, as a result of it, he's going to say, well, that doesn't make, I guess I believe it. Person that now wants to come to Islam, they hear this nonsense, and like, I guess. You understand, everyone? When a person says that type of affair, I guess, does that sound like they have surety in what they believe, or they're reluctant, or they're wavering? They're reluctant and they're what? Wavering. They have no yaqeen. There is no surety. There is some doubt there. The affairs of what we're speaking about here, and the most important of matters, is that a person believes in something fully, and it brings them what? Surety in what they're upon, and as a result of it, their iman will excel, and it will take off and it'll become stronger. That's what every Muslim needs. In which, if they believe this type of aqidah, this will be the result. But if you embrace the aqidah of the Asha'ira, and what they're upon by saying, no, it's not real speech, it's figurative. It's figurative speech. Or it's not real. Or Allah doesn't speak with any voice. The message of Allah heard internal thoughts from Allah, which doesn't make any sense. And that on the day of resurrection, you'll just hear something that's implied in your mind. You won't actually hear a voice holding you accountable. All that's absolute nonsense. And any Muslim that hears that rhetoric, they're either going to be weak in their faith or they're going to go astray. Because these type of matters, like we said, the ultimate result of it is doubt. Or totally rejecting it to the point where they abandon Islam. And that's the reason why we teach and take the opportunity and the initiative to teach the people the proper aqidah, because that's the only thing that's going to rectify human beings and bring rectification to the earth and removing corruption. Is it clear? Let's keep going. So, Ibn Khafif, by the great Imam, Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, he says, يقول Ibn Khafif. Keep in mind, like we said, we continue to cite the statement of Ibn Khafif. Shaykh al-Islam is citing his statement. He's citing his statement. Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah. فقولنا وقول أئمتنا أن القرآن كلام الله غير مخلوق وأنه صفة لله منه بدأ قولا أي هو الذي قاله وإليه يعود حكما. He said our statement, meaning those who want to adhere to what's correct, that the Quran is the speech of Allah, it's not created. Excuse me. It's a characteristic of Allah. From Allah it started as far as what everyone? As far as his statement. It started from Allah, qawlan. It started in law with Allah is what everyone? Statement. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave it to who? Gave it to Jibreel. He gave it to Jibreel alayhi salam. Bada'a qawlan huwa alladhi qala. And to him it will return as far as what everyone? Hukman. It started with Allah qawlan. It will return back to Allah hukman. And I want everyone to understand that point. It started with Allah qawlan. In statement. It will return back to Allah as far as what? Hukman, as far as in the ruling. What does that mean? As I gave the explanation, or I gave the clarity in this about 20 minutes ago. What does that mean, everyone? Hukman. Meaning that the yurfa'u hukmuhu wa ma'nahu wa ma dalla alayh. Meaning Allah will raise it, the rulings, the meanings, and what indicates it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will what? Remove it all. As we talked about, there will be a time, like we said, in the Athar. If you go back to the books, everyone, the book's called Ashrat al-Sa'ah al-Kubra, especially by the great Imam, a couple of books, there's a couple of them. The book by the great Imam Shaykh Hamoud al-Tuwajiri, rahimahullah. There's a couple of them. That's the one that stands out for me right now. Shaykh Hamoud al-Tuwajiri, rahimahullah, which is a very beneficial book he authored called Ithaf al-Jama'ah bi Ishrat al-Sa'ah. Of course, that book. In that book by the great Imam Shaykh Hamoud al-Tuwajiri, rahimahullah, he brought the athar of that in the last days and times on this earth, towards where the day of resurrection is close, is approaching very closely now. Very closely. Very close. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one night will remove the memorization of the Quran from the hearts of the people, meaning from their memory. That Allah will remove it all. And that is the meaning of the hadith where it says to Allah it started statement, but in the ruling it will be what? Removed. It will be removed. Meaning that the Quran will be removed from the earth and it will be removed from what, everyone? From the memories and the hearts of the people. And it will not remain. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. ولا قوة إلا بالله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وبعث مقام محمود الذي وعده. Like we said, everyone, the meaning of the narration in regards to the statement of the Salaf, like we said, from Allah it started, minhu bada' wa ilayhi ya'ud. From Allah it started, and to Him it will return. Is there an other upon this, or regards to this matter? Yes, it is. You'll find there's a statement of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu, where it says, it's extracted in Al-Bayhaqi in his book called Shu'ab al-Iman, Branches of Faith, by the great Imam Al-Bayhaqi, rahimahullah. And also the great Imam Abdullah ibn Mubarak mentioned his book called Az-Zuhd, Al-Raqa'iq. And also the great Imam Nu'aym ibn Hammad fi al-Fitan. And Al-Fakihi fi Akhbari Makkah, Wad-Darimi also in his Sunan. The statement of the great Sahabi radiyallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud ibn Ghafil al-Hudhali radiyallahu anhu wa ardahu, قال Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, اقرأ القرآن قبل أن يرفع فإنه لا تقوم الساعة حتى يرفع. فقيل فكيف بما في صدور الناس؟ قال يسرى عليه ليلا فيرفع ما في صدورهم فيصبحون فيقولون كأننا لم نعلم شيئا ثم يفيضون في الشعر. As Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, that he mentioned this other, he said, read the Quran before it is raised. He said, اقرأ القرآن قبل أن يرفع. Read the Quran and recite it before it's raised. For verily the hour will not be established until it's raised. And it was said, how about the memory or the memorization of it in the chest of men, or the memories of men? He said, it will be removed at one night. Yusra alayhi laylan. There will be a night, it will come, and it will be what? Removed from their memories. فَيُرْفَعُ مَا فِي صُدُورِهِمْ. It will be raised of what was in their memories. They will come upon the morning, and they will say, as if we did not know anything. He says, and then they will partake in being engrossed in poetry. Is it clear, everyone? So that's from those athar, to let one know that the meaning of the word to Allah it will return, meaning the Quran, that it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise it from the earth, and from the memories of the people, and from their hearts. And that will be from the great signs of the day of resurrection, right before it commences. Is it clear? Is it clear, everyone? طيب. So that's the meaning of that statement of the Salaf, where they said, Al-Quran kalam Allah ghayru makhluq, or as-sifatu lillah minhu bada' wa ilayhi ya'ud. That the speech of Allah, the Quran is the speech of Allah. It's not created, of course. From Allah it started, and to Allah it will return. And that's the meaning of the statement. Is it clear, everyone? Before I move on, we got to come up for 5 more minutes. We'll stop, inshallah. Then, if you go or return back to the statement of Ibn Khafif, rahimahullah, where Shaykh al-Islam continues to cite his statement. If you notice, all the statements of Ibn Khafif agreed with what, everyone? The proper aqeedah in this regard. And like we said, Shaykh al-Islam capitalized upon the statements of the adversaries using their statements against their followers. To say, look to this individual who you hold in high esteem, in high regards, and how he agrees to what we believe. And if you truly revere him, why are you not following what he's saying here? Because this actually agrees with the pure Islam and the pure Aqidah. Is it clear what I'm saying, everyone? Good. So let's keep going. I'm about to stop in a minute. It says, ثم ذكر الخلاف الرؤيا. Then Ibn Khafif mentioned how the Muslims went astray in regards to Allah being seen. As we said, في رؤية العباد لله رب العالمين قال وقال قولنا وقول أئمتنا فيما نعتقد أن الله يرى في يوم القيامة وذكر الحجة. Then he mentioned the statement, he said the statement of our great scholars, meaning those who traverse the proper belief in the pure Islam. He said, of what we truly believe, that Allah will be seen on the day of resurrection. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen. Then he mentioned the proofs. And we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter will be seen by the human beings twice, as we know. He'll be seen on the day of resurrection, and he will be seen in paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from his inhabitants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be seen on the day of resurrection by the believers, and we'll talk about the hypocrites and the kuffar, from the disbelievers, whether or not they will see him or not. Next class, inshallah. But we know, so we know by agreement that the believers will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of resurrection. And they'll be tested. Also, the believers will be tested, and those who are amongst them from the hypocrites will be tested. As we know the hadith which comes in Bukhari, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come to them in the closest image of what they thought he was. And he says, Ana Rabbukum, I'm your Lord. Then they said those who were upon the correct creed in this world, and they have proper knowledge, they will say this statement, Na'udhu billahi mink, la nushriku billahi shay'a. I seek refuge in Allah from you. We don't set up partners with Allah, anything in these. He said then certain people will fail, and the Messenger of Allah said they will flip. And that Allah will test them. And we'll talk about those narrations later. The point of the matter is that on the day of resurrection, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what everyone, will be seen twice. For the believers in agreement, and like we said, next class we'll speak about the hypocrites and the kuffar, whether or not they'll see Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also be seen in Dal Karama, in paradise. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will raise the veil, and the inhabitants of paradise will be what? Will see him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the two affairs. Like we said, if you want to mention it and sum it up by saying, في عرصات القيامة وفي دار الكرامة. في عرصات القيامة وفي دار الكرامة. عرصات القيامة means the plains of the day of resurrection. And Dar al-Karama meaning the place of honor, which is for the people of paradise and its inhabitants. Is it clear, everyone? Good.
Stop. What can I find that? I want to read it.
I give it to you after the class, show. I got you. Inshallah. So it's a couple of books. I'll give it to you. I got you. Inshallah. So those matters, everyone. يرى يوم القيامة رؤية الله يوم القيامة. هل المؤمنون فقط هم الذين يرونه. This is where we'll stop right here. Is it only the believers? As we know, the most important thing is the believers will see him. So that has nothing to do with Aqidah. So nobody try to capitalize by saying, see, it's a difference in Aqidah. This has nothing to do with that. This affair is talking about who? The kuffar and the munafiqun. Is it clear? That has nothing to do with, it's ikhtilaf in Aqidah. How does that affect our belief of whether or not the kuffar and the hypocrites will see Allah on the day of resurrection? Nothing. So nobody try to utilize this for that type of doubt. طيب. He says, هل المؤمنون see Allah? And then, or Allah will come on the day of resurrection and allow to be seen, and then he will be hidden from them. Meaning from the disbelievers and the hypocrites. That's a statement, which we'll talk about, like we said, in detail next class. And this is what you'll find in Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar that he mentions, rahimahullah. The second statement is that all of them will see him. The believers, the kuffar, the hypocrites, the disbelievers. But however, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will become what? Hidden from them. And that affair is the highest extent of retribution and humiliation. That you see Allah and then what? You'll never see him again. But you might hear his voice, but the voice that Allah will give to the hypocrites and the disbelievers is a voice of humiliation. As we know in the Quran, there's an ayah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book, إِخْسَأُ فِيهَا وَلَا تُكَلِّمُونَ. The verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the disbelievers in hell by rebuking them, to say, may you be humiliated in hell. Don't speak to me. Is it clear, everyone? That's a form of speech. And that's a form of addressment. But however, the type of addressment here is what? It's a type of rebuke, or it's a type of humiliation, and a form of disgrace for them. Is it clear? So that's the matter that we wanted to mention. And this is the second, like we said, next class we'll take the opportunity to give more detail, to shed some more light in this regard, don't worry. But the point of the matter is, like we said, what is agreed upon is that the believers definitely will what? See him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to see him, subhanahu, on the day of resurrection and in the hereafter. And in paradise, and in the final dwelling, eternal abode, which is paradise. We'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson, anyone? Tafadal Abdul Ghani.
Which ayah is that mentions the greatest bliss? They see the face of their Lord.
Surah Hud, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً وَلَا تَرْهَقُ وُجُوهَهُمْ قَتَرٌ وَلَا ذِلَّةٌ أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ وَالَّذِينَ كَسَبُوا السَّيِّئَاتِ. Find a number for me, if everyone can find a number. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. For those who perform excellence in their iman and faith and deeds, they will have the greatest reward, which is paradise, and something extra. It's something extra. What's the extra? Seeing the face of their Lord. They'll see Allah. لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً وَلَا يَرْهَقُ وُجُوهَهُمْ قَتَرٌ وَلَا ذِلَّةٌ أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَنَّةِ هُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ وَالَّذِينَ كَسَبُوا السَّيِّئَاتِ جَزَاءُ سَيِّئَةٍ بِمِثْلِهَا وَتَرْهَقُهُمْ ذِلَّةٌ مَا لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ مِنْ عَاصِمٍ كأنما أغشيت وجوههم قطعا من الليل مظلمة أولئك أصحاب النار هم فيها خالدون ويوم نحشرهم. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in his book that he says, Surah Hud, find the ayah where it says ziyada, and more. He said, for those who perform excellence, they will have the dwelling place of paradise and more. And their faces will not be humiliated with blackness, nor humiliation. They are the inhabitants of paradise, dwelling therein, or abiding therein eternally, or forever. So that's one ayah. You'll find that the tafsir, which Ibn Kathir and other than I mentioned, he said, when they look upon Allah, they will be not given anything greater than bliss than gazing upon Him. And like we said, wa alaykum as-salam. Because now everyone, those matters as pertaining to looking at Allah, something happened, which is the greatest form of pleasure, which is what? The pleasure of the heart will occur. So we know that the external bliss is physical. But when looking at Allah, the internal bliss will take place, which is of the heart. Until to the point, it says in the narration, everything that they're in of bliss and pleasure, they'll forget about it when they look at Allah. Wa alaykum as-salam. You understand? Everything in of bliss and pleasure, they'll forget about it when they look upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Keep in mind, paradise, brothers and sisters, there's no more sickness, there's no more sleep, there's no more weakness, starvation, anything. And they'll forget about all of that when they look upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thought we'd stop here. Anything else? That's one ayah. There's another ayah, Surah Qaf. So it's one ayah, Surah Hud. If anyone will give me the number. Oh, so brother gave me the number here. 1026, he said. The 26th ayah, Surah Hud. That's correct. There's another ayah, Surah Qaf. I don't know the number. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأُزْلِفَتِ الْجَنَّةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ غَيْرَ بَعِيدٍ هَذَا مَا تُوعَدُونَ لِكُلِّ أَوَّابٍ حَفِيظٍ هَذَا مَا تُوعَدُونَ لِكُلِّ أَوَّابٍ حَفِيظٍ من خشي الرحمن بالغيب وجاء بقلب منيب ادخلوها بسلام ذلك يوم الخلود. This is the ayah right here. لهم ما يشاءون فيها ولدينا مزيد. ولدينا مزيد. That's the ayah. They will have in paradise everything they will, and we have something extra. وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. That extra is what? Looking at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's two ayahs. It's Surah Hud and Surah what? Qaf. I don't know the number. If anybody can find it for me. So we'll stop here. Anything else about the lesson? Anything else, anyone? Like I said, stop. I'll give it to you at the slideshow. Anything else, anyone? About the lesson? So we'll stop here. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. So I think a brother here saying this ayah number 30 is Surah Qaf. Ayah number 30. It's Surah Hud, ayah number 26. Surah Hud. It's not there?
Not 26.
What is it then? What number? 526?
No, I'm saying not 26. I don't know.
Look at the word ziyada. No, one's in Hud and one's in Qaf. I just don't know the number of the ayah. One's in Surah Hud and another one's in Surah Qaf. Oh, he said, sorry, it's 35.
Yeah.
35. Surah Hud.
Yeah, right here.
What number is this?
That's 35.
35. You guys have it? It's Surah Hud 35.
They will have all that they desire. We have more for them. A glance at the Almighty, all majestic.
What's the number? I need the number.
35.
Then it, Paul.
He
He threw it off. He in the computer. Yeah, I'll find it for everybody. It's in Surah Qaf, ayah number 35.
Oh, it's in the cough, you said.
It's two. It's two evidences. Don't worry, I'll find it. I got it.
You said who?
Here it is. Oh, that's my mistake. Now I made a mistake. It's Surah Yunus, ayah number 26. Not Hud. Yunus.
Number 26.
That's it, I got it. Surah Yunus, ayah number 26. You have it? Yunus, I made a mistake. Now Hud. We'll close out, but you're waiting for the salah. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. Yeah, that's it. That's it.